Welcome to another Instructable video. This time we're going to be looking at the screws which hold the Xenon ballasts in place on Xenon headlights, also the headlight washer screws which hold the washers in place on some of the higher spec models unless they were spec'd up, but also the Xenon ballasts themselves. These are screws which very often corrode. They corrode quite heavily, and if you remove them without care, then they end up snapping, just like on this one here that's been sent to me for refurbishment. So we will attempt to extricate these screws, but more to the point, I'm going to show you how to remove the screws to avoid them snapping in the first instance. We're going to be using GT85, but you can use anything you want really. 3-in-1 oil, WD-40, ACF50 corrosion block, any sort of penetrating oil, plus gas even, anything that you want to use that's going to get in there and add a bit of lubrication. Because although it's gone into plastic, as soon as the metal corrodes or rusts in this case, it expands. So having applied the penetrating oil, it's literally just a case of very carefully rotating the screw back and forth to allow the penetrating oil to work its way through. On these particular screws, they aren't as bad as they could be, so actually because of that condition they are coming out reasonably easily, but still don't be fooled by any that just look darkened rather than rusted and totally sort of botched on the surface. There is a chance that any could break, and they snap quite easily when they do snap, as you can see from that previous headlight sent in. So it's really just very small movements until it gets to the point where you can actually see decent amount of thread, and you can then begin to unscrew the screw fully. Having removed that single screw, we turn our attention to the other side, again exercising quite a lot of caution and being extra careful on this side not to apply any force to the washer itself, because obviously now it's not retained on one side. You could quite easily apply excess pressure and snap the head off simply by pressing too hard on the washer front. As you can see there, the top part of the screw is quite heavily corroded, but the lower half isn't at this point. You can effectively see the line where it was just within the outer plastic there. If we compare that to a decent screw, you can see what color it should be, and you can see what kind of danger would await you if you left this screw, the older screw, in place for any prolonged period of time, or indeed out in the elements. There's nothing that you can really do to prevent this sort of corrosion other than applying a heavy layer of grease when you install the screws. I would always replace them. Adding more penetrating oil into the screws that are holding the ballast in place is not a bad idea. They are more prone to corrosion than the headlight washer screws in my experience, so it does pay to take a little bit extra care here. The T-bar setup here is really useful because it allows you to get a very small amount of motion on the screw in a back and forth pattern, which means that you don't put too much stress on it at any one time, but also you can very clearly see how much rotation you're getting when it's only a couple of degrees or two. At this point I have managed to get each of the screws just to loosen by a few degrees, which gives us a little bit of space in which to apply extra oil that will penetrate further down the threads, and you then just tighten the screw back up just to ensure that you're getting the oil back down the threads within the gap. This one's actually been quite a challenge, so I've removed the extension to help keep the bit level and reduce the chance of snapping the head. You can see there the small back and forth motions to just help drive the oil further in. With each mini rotation you can get and more oil added, you'll find that the screw turns more and more each time. After a while you'll get a feel for whether the screw will come out okay without snapping. So in this case I've rotated the screw about one full turn at this point, and I'm happy that oil is far enough down the thread that I can start extricating it. And here you can see just how much corrosion has built up on the threads of the screw. Usually what I'd suggest in this case is replacing the screw with a number 6x12, preferably stainless steel screw. But if that's not something that's possible for you right now, then what you can do is re-oil the screw and simply run it in and out a few times to clear any debris or any corrosion. Turning your attention to the other two screws holding the ballast in place, perform the same sort of task. With this one, be really careful, because if you snap this one, there's no way that you're going to extricate the part that remains. However, that being said, you do only need 2 screws in place to hold the ballast sensibly to the bottom of the light. There are lots of ballast designs out there that only have 2 screws holding them in place. This Hella one is not unique in having 3, but they're certainly not all required. So if one breaks, then hope that it's this center one, because that's the one that is least required of the 3. But as you can see, breaking it is not on the cards today. As you can see from the condition of this ballast, it's pretty poor, and it looks like there's been water ingress in there, so we'll check the seal around the back cap as well as replacing this ballast. It is actually possible to separate these ballasts and repair them, so this is something that I might run a second video on at some point. On the other headlight, where the customer has snapped 2 screws, we're going to remove at least one. The leading center one's going to be the most difficult one to remove, and it's snapped low down, but this outer one should at least be possible to get out. I've already been liberally applying oil, just put some more on then, but now it's just going to come down to self-locking pliers and a bit of force. If that doesn't work, I'll cut it out and plastic weld the tube back together. So I'm using vice grips made by Irwin. You're going to want quality ones where the jaws don't misalign when you clamp them shut. And as you can see, this one is coming out. It's the same sort of process, just tease it back and forth, maybe apply a little bit of oil if you feel the resistance increase, but if not, just keep twisting it. And as you can see, this one is now coming free, and will pop out in a moment. And as expected, it's in pretty awful condition, which is probably why it snapped so easily. And here's the challenge with these center ones. You just don't have the access, and they very often snap low down. It can also happen to the other screws, but there's just nothing to actually get those pliers on, so we're going to have to leave that. It is possible, if the customer's really keen on keeping it, to cut that screw out, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of plastic welding to get it right, and generally I try to avoid it. As I say, the ballast is fine with just 2 screws. Anyways, really hope you found this helpful. Any comments, feel free to chuck them in. Please like, share the video, subscribe to the channel, it all helps. And yeah, if you want to see any other guides, please shoot me a message or leave a comment, and I'll do my best to help you out.